Have you ever looked at a photo and just wondered, damn, how does it look so good? Well, chances are a few masks were used to achieve that result. This is easily one of the most powerful tools in Lightroom, probably the most powerful in my opinion, giving us endless options and flexibility, and when used well, can really take your editing to the next level. This is a tool professionals use all the time and something I use in almost all my edits. Editing almost daily now in Lightroom for more than 10 years. I did make a video on a similar topic over 4 years ago now. Lightroom has drastically improved its masking tool since then. So time for an updated video, I think. One that will help you unlock this powerful tool yourself. Let's jump in. So to kick this video off, let's start with some basics, as masking can be simple, but we're going to get more and more advanced throughout the video. Alright, so our first photo here, you can see this is where we'll find our masking tool on the top right here, this circle. You can also hit Shift W as the shortcut. So let's open it up. We have our different AI masks here and these options as well. The first two I want to go through are probably the most simple, but perhaps the most effective in my opinion, which is our linear and radial gradient. So let's go linear first. This is probably the easiest one to use, but I use it all the time. And basically it's a gradual application of those settings. You can see from our overlay here, which you can turn on and off or change the color. Basically, the more we pull it up, the more gradual it will be. So I want this to gradually affect our foreground, but not so much the background here. So what I'm going to do is just add some detail to our foreground using texture. Let's just ramp that up so you can really see what it's doing. And you can also add in a little bit of sharpness as well, just so we're getting some nice detail in those trees. A real simple way you can use these linear gradients. Now, I want to basically increase this mood in the background. You can see there's a little bit of haze, a little bit of mist behind the town here. So I'm going to grab a radial gradient and let's really increase this. Big gradient, let's go up, boost our exposure a little bit. I'm going to bring the clarity right down to soften it. That gives us this soft look. And I want to make it nice and hazy, so negative dehaze. And this is the effect I want, but I want this behind the little town. I don't want it affecting this area of the town here. So what we're going to do is go in and subtract. So if we click on subtract, we could try and find our subject. This one, no obvious subject found. So what we're going to do is subtract and go objects. There's two ways we can select our object here. I'm basically going to paint it in, just make my cursor much bigger. And I'm going to paint the entire foreground and the town there. You can be pretty rough with this. Lightroom does a pretty good job to find that area. Turn on our overlay just to see. And that's basically found everything I wanted to, except this little tower. So let's go subtract again, objects, make this much smaller, and just paint over our tower. Perfect. Turn off our overlay. You can see now we have this really great mask that's just affecting the area behind the town there. So this is something I use all the time, really effective. Before the mask, that first one, and then boom, that second one, a really dramatic effect here. So let's jump to another photo. So this one, I want to quickly show you subject select. If I hit subject, Lightroom really quickly finds your subject. We can go and add in a little bit of detail in a similar way we did before, texture, clarity, sharpness, whatever you want to do. But for this one, just a nice simple effect there to find our subject. The next thing I want to show you is adding in radial gradients wherever that light's coming from. Again, we want to keep our edits somewhat realistic because this is what makes them look good, still having some sense of reality. So let's go radial gradient. You can see in this one, the sunlight's coming from that top left. So that's the direction I want this radial gradient to come from. For sunlight like this or any light, I always use a radial gradient because this is largely how light's going to react, gradually going to fade out in a kind of circular direction. So here, to increase the light, let's boost our exposure a little bit. I'm going to make it slightly warmer using our white balance. And I also like to soften it. So again, negative clarity and again, a bit of a haze. You can see this effect that it's having. Turn that mask off. We're really increase that sunlight there. So I use this all the time, whichever direction the light is coming from. If you can't work this out, look where the shadows are, look what the brightest parts are. You should be able to work out where the light's coming from. With this one, we can also subtract our subject. So if I wanted that coming more from behind my subject, if this was a backlit photo, it shouldn't be hitting at the front of our subject. So we can go in and subtract the subject as well. You can see now I have this nice radial gradient behind my subject, not affecting the subject at all. But on this one, you can see the light's actually hitting me there. So I want to probably turn that subject off. I want that little bit of light hitting my face and chest there like it was naturally. So a bonus tip here, if you find a masking effect that you're regularly using and you really like, make sure you save it as your own preset as well, which can really speed up your workflow. In my preset packs, I have a bunch of different masks and bonus tools included, especially in my Cinefilm pack. One click, you can apply these masks, then go and adjust as needed from there. So I use presets on pretty much all my edits, offering such a great starting point to really nail down your colors and tone. So not only will you get a bunch of great presets, tried and tested, you're also helping support the channel and me making more videos just like this one. So thanks again for your support. Like we did in that last one of the best ways to use mask is actually in combinations. This is really next level masking and there's really endless combinations you can come up with. So let's go through a few common ones that I use all the time. In my editing, I often like this film softness. You can see I've already added in a little bit of negative clarity to the entire image, but often this kind of bloom that we get from things like mist filters, it only really affects those highlights. So how we can do that in our editing process is with gradients as well. So I'm gonna come down and go linear gradient for this one, but I don't want it to be gradual. I want it to affect the whole image. So just drag it across. But the next thing we're gonna do is intersect again, this time with luminance range. So this is how we can select the brighter parts of our image. So this little slider here, we drag it all the way to our right, which is those brightest parts of the image. But what I want to do here, you can see this second slider. This helps blend it in a little bit. So let's go highlights, that last bit, and then just blend it in a little bit as well. We're going to come down to negative clarity again and negative dehaze. Come back up and we can just fiddle with the amount there as well. So that's one way you can get this kind of nice film softness in your edits, more on those highlights. So the next one I want to show you is select sky. Lightroom always does a really good job to find the sky. However, if we make dramatic changes here, let's just make it much cooler, make the sky more blue. You can see it's quite unnatural how it applies these. It's really harsh where the sky stops. So we can make this a little bit more natural. Let's just go in and change our other settings. Sometimes I might want to make my sky a little bit hazier, a little bit softer. But again, it's just a little bit unnatural. So let's go intersect with, again, linear gradient, bring down, and now we can get that gradual application of those settings. Again, tone it down a little bit. If I go into our mask and turn off the linear gradient, you can see how it's just getting that gradual application of our settings. But this is how you can make those sky gradients a little bit more natural as well. So next thing I want to do in this is add in a bit more detail to Mount Fuji here. So again, I'm going to go add, this time object. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly paint over Mount Fuji there. Hopefully it finds it pretty well. Yep, that'll do because I mainly want the detail at the top anyway. So similar, let's add in a whole bunch of texture, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of sharpness. If I zoom in, you can see how it's just added in that nice little bit of detail to Mount Fuji. I want to do a similar thing to the train to make it stand out a little bit more. So let's go again, objects, make it a little bit smaller, zoom out a tiny bit, and just roughly paint over our train. And boom, it's found it really well. We can go and change those settings. I might want to make it stand out a bit more with the whites or exposure. Perfect. And again, just add in that little bit of detail to it using texture, clarity, whatever combination you want. If I turn that off, you can see how it's just making our train stand out a little bit more as well. Next thing I want to show you, similar to our sky one, if we go select sky, say I wanted to select everything in this photo except the sky, so add in some detail to the foreground. We're going to go select sky, but this time we're going to right click and go invert. So now we're getting everything other than the sky. we can go and add in a bit of detail basically to everything that isn't the sky. So this is a really handy feature as well. You can invert any of your masks and get that opposite area. So to finish this one off, lots of masks, I would go in and add in a radial gradient like we did earlier with the direction of the sun, which is on the left here. Just boost that up, usually for sunlight. Again, exposure, maybe a little bit warmer, not too much on this one. And I'm gonna come down, a little bit of negative clarity, nice soft sunlight, and a little bit of haze as well. So lots of masks on this one. You can see before and after with all those masks we've applied. All right, now let's move on to a portrait example and how I use masking on people. I don't shoot a lot of portraits these days. This one is my beautiful wife, Michelle. But when I do, these are some of the masking features that I frequently use. What I want to show you now is selecting people. So when you've got an obvious person, it will usually pop up down here at the bottom. So let's click on that. And now we can use a lot of individual masks as well. So what I like to often grab is our facial skin. Body skin, I'm not concerned about. Eyebrows, I want to grab, except it's found 2 for some reason on the side here, but let's still grab that. Eyes are closed, so I'm not going to grab that, but often I would. Lips, yes. Hair, yes. Clothes, depends. Sometimes fashion, you might want to add some details to the clothes, but this one, I'm not concerned. It's mainly those facial features. So let's go create mask, and I've got separate masks for each of these. So this is really handy. Now we can go and affect just those areas. Perhaps the best one is the facial skin. So what I like to do is make that skin a little bit softer. So negative texture and negative clarity. If we zoom in a little bit, you can just see how that's really softening that facial skin, which is a really nice effect. Next, let's come to our eyebrows. If I want to fix that, I can go subtract, brush, and just brush out that top one that it found. Just because of the shadow, it thought it was an eyebrow on this occasion. Sometimes you might want to add in a little bit of detail to any hair as well. So just slight, let's do that there. Same on the hair here. Add in that little bit of detail. And often I'll do the same on the lips. Again, this can just give a little bit of depth to the face as well. So really simple adjustments there. It's mainly the face that makes a dramatic difference, but you can see before, after with those features. Lastly, on this one, I'm gonna add in a radial gradient. You can see this sunlight kind of in this direction behind Michelle there. So let's go radial gradient, pretty long and narrow, but let's tilt that in that direction of the light. So I'm just gonna soften this light behind Michelle there. But I want to get it behind her. So let's go subtract subject. Now I've just got this area behind her. So I'm just going to increase that light a little bit and now soften it out, haze it out a little bit. I could tweak my white balance as well. So let's just go up, see how that mask has affected behind the subject as well. Really neat features for your portraits as well. Here, looking more at street photography and how you can really use masking to up your street edits. One thing I like to do in a lot of my street photography is really darken those shadows, creating this contrast and really drawing your eye into the image. Of course, we can do this with our sliders, but again, masking can really take this to the next level by just affecting the part of the image we want to affect. So let's come up, I'm gonna grab a couple of linear gradients, and I'm basically gonna add these to all those corner areas where we've got lots of shadow. Just make that pretty much a hard stop where our shadows are, turn it a little bit. Under the same one, I'm going to go add, because I want all these settings to be the same. Again, another one, get this corner as well. Add another one to get this side. Now this one's a little bit trickier. We're just gonna have to subtract because of the shape. So let's get one for that side. And this time I'm just gonna subtract and just paint out this area here. But now we've got basically all those shadows, so we can go and darken them a little bit. So let's bring down our shadows, bring down our exposure a bit. We just don't want those blacks too black, I guess. So we don't want them to clip. So we can come down to our tone curve, add in a few points here. So the only reason I added 3 points there, so when I fade up here, you can see that's just fading out our black slightly, just the area we've selected. it's not affecting the rest of the curve. So you can see there with this mask, really just darkened those shadows before our mask and after. It really makes this image stand out a little bit more. All right, I hope you found this one useful. Please do subscribe if you did, and jump into a bunch of my other editing videos on the channel to learn more. You can also check me out on Instagram at TKNorth, and please check out my presets if you're interested. Keep on creating, keep on growing, my friends. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.